Okay, good morning, everyone. Hopefully next week you'll see me clean shaven and a haircut, right? Tonight is Lag BaOmer, but the law is that you're not supposed to shave or get a haircut until tomorrow, because the students of Akiva still trickled to die, and we consider Mitzvah Yom Kikulo half the day is the whole day. All right, but we wait until daybreak tomorrow. So just FYI on that. But just want to talk for a second about Lag BaOmer before we start our class. Right. So, Lag BaOmer is a very interesting holiday. It's brought down in the Code of Jewish Law. It's not your typical, of course, it's not a rabbinic holiday. It's, of course, not a biblical holiday. We go about our regular business, but there's traditions that's brought down in the Code of Jewish Law. We don't say Tachanan. It's customary to be a little more have a little more celebration on the holiday. And the prime reason is to celebrate the life of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. That's the main reason that's brought down. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai passed away on this day, and we celebrate his life. And he's the one that revealed the Zohar, the Kabbalistic teachings, to the world. Of course, it's always around. We gave an introduction once in one of the classes. I don't remember which one, right? But of course, Kabbalah, the mystical teachings, is all part of the oral law, right? But he, with his lofty level of spirituality and his ability to sort of codify it in a what we call the Zohar, he was the first one to really codify it and write it. And we celebrate his life, the concept of dedication, the concept of spirituality, and therefore that's why the custom is to have a bonfire, because fire represents spirituality, the ultimate spirituality, where it's something you could see, but it defies the laws of nature. It goes upwards, doesn't go down. You could put your hand through it, right? It has heat, which could be both, God forbid, destructive, right? Or, right, if used in the proper way, could be the source of all human society, right? To be able to have heat, to be able to cook, to be able to keep yourself warm, right? We can't survive without fire. Nowadays we call electricity, right? But we can't survive without fire either. And that's really an idea of spirituality, of the Torah, the Zohar, the Kabbalistic teachings, but also, the revealed teaching, but primarily the mystical teachings. If you misuse it, right, it's fire, right? It's fire. It could burn you up. But if you make sure that you learn it properly and you have the right teachers, right, and you have the right tradition, and you Torah in general, right, but especially the mystical world, then it's the greatest source of our existence. It feeds us, it keeps us warm spiritually, and it allows us to get closer to God. And that's one of the relationships to the concept of fire, right, to the spiritual realm, to the spiritual teachings, and to Torah and to Judaism, right, is to remind us of this very important thing, that there's a lot of information out there, especially now with the internet and with all these people that everybody could give their 2 cents, right? Just like I'm giving my 2 cents, right? But everybody could give their 2 cents, and it's all over the place. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on here, it's on that, all different social medias. You could all WhatsApps, it's flying around, right? And we just have to be careful that we are getting a fire that will not destroy us, but on the contrary, will allow us to grow. And that's upon us, right? So, well, I heard that. Well, do a little research on who you're listening to, right? What is their background? What is their moral compass? What is their tradition? What are they rooted in, right? And what's the source where they're getting it from, right? And that is something that is incumbent upon you as individuals and myself when I look around to know who we're studying from, right? Yes, and once we're studying from that person and we feel that that's the right person to study from, then we have to go in all in, right? But we have to be very careful. And I've said this many times, but I think it's a great opportunity today, because that's really what fire is, right? Fire in the beginning could be, oh, it's warm, it's this, that, but if it gets out of control, it infects you with ideas that are not Torah based, with ideas that are sound nice and beautiful for the 21st century, right? What we're in, right? For 2022, but really are very damaging to our moral compass, very damaging to our view on Judaism, our relationship with God, the transmission of the Torah. Those things are very dangerous, and it picks on you and picks on you and picks on you, and eventually, before you know it, you're not religious anymore. And I've seen this happen numerous times. People are like, just trying to expand my horizon, just trying to, yes, you have to do it very carefully. And of course, knowledge is important, but we have to make sure that we, and my rabbi once said, Chaim Epstein, he said, people are so open-minded, they let all the fleas in, right? It's important to be open-minded, but you also have to make sure that you don't let all the fleas in. Right. And it is something very important. And I hope I'm not being too sharp, but, today is an important day. And it's and Shem Chai taught us, that we have to be very careful of the Torah that we learn and the knowledge that we acquire. And that is something that is what the concept of fire is. Fire, again, to be very, very important. Right, fire is our sustenance, feeding us, warmth and everything. Right, but fire is also can be very destructive when it's out of control, right? When it's not controlled, and that's something that we all have to reflect on. When we're looking into the idea of the idea of our knowledge. Martha, I'm so sorry for your loss. Again, sorry for your loss, Martha. So let's now, with that introduction, right? Let's now get into what we're learning. Any questions before we go? Any questions on what I just said? I'm sorry, I'm going to turn my thing on.
That's a quick question, Rabbi. I'll save my comments until the end. But a quick question: is there any special reading or healing that's said today then for Ladin?
Good question. So there is there's a custom to say, it's in the Siddur. I'll have to find it. There's a special song that is said that is customary to sing, but it's not like any specific. Let's see if I can find it. It's not something obligated or things like that, but there is like a special song that is customary to sing. 1 second. Let's see if I can find it in the Siddur. No, it's not in the Siddur. Interesting. I think I'm going to be in the Siddur. Wait, 1 second. One second, maybe it's here. No, I don't see it in the Siddur. But it's just different stanzas talking about the life of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. I'll have to find it. If you remind me during the day, I could send it to you. It's different standards. It's a song. It's standards was turned into a song. It's more like different prayers, but it was turned into a song, talking about the greatness of Shimon Bar Yochai and the concept of the Torah. There's no specific prayer. Again, this holiday was sort of really codified as a holiday more in probably the 1300s, 1400s. There was always a celebrated day, but to the extent that we have now, when the Arizal and the Kabbalistic movement, even a little before that, sort of composed it into a full-fledged holiday like we have it today, but it's not a full-fledged holiday. So you could go to work. Everything's not. There's no specific mitzvah that you're supposed to do that day. We just don't say tachanon. We don't say certain prayers that are we don't say on a small holiday, but there's no. You could go through the day and you didn't not fulfill anything by not doing anything. Right? It's customary to be by bonfire. It's customary to be celebrate, right? But there's no specific thing they should or shouldn't do, or should say or shouldn't say, right, on that day. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so let's get cracking over here. Okay, so we are on page 264, day 92. So this, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting rid of this. This is a very interesting discussion, and there's a lot of moving parts to it, right? And it really starts a new part, not new part, but a continuation, but a new avenue, right, to this discussion. So you're at a wedding when Levi, right, sitting next to you as Shimon, on the other side of him, what he knows about the Stephan family, right? As he was given as a reference for a shidduch. Sorry, and as he was given as a reference to a shidduch, right? As a reference for the matchmaking for the family. Your ears perk up because Racheli Stern, the wife of that family, is your sister's Shimshon's, right? Is your sister, right? So you have your ears perk up because Racheli Stern, the wife of the family, is your sister. So you're family, right? Shimshon says, he tells everyone who asks that he knows your brother-in-law from yeshiva 25 years ago. And he was totally unfocused, a real character. And he adds, if his kids turned out normal, it's a miracle. Right? Okay, wow. May you inform your brother-in-law that Shimon is giving out this damaging, all right, demeaning, outdated information, right? So again, the question is, right, so the scenario is, and again, let's not, the scenario is there to bring out a point, right? It could be a little different. It depends on, and slightly different things, but the point's like this. Are you allowed to tell, over here it happens to be your brother-in-law, right? Let's say it's not your brother-in-law, a very, very good friend, a family friend, someone that you know very well, right? But whatever reason you're not given as reference, or maybe you were or not, but maybe that's why your brother-in-law, that's why you weren't given as reference. And your brother-in-law gives this Shimon as a reference, right? Thinking that he's a good buddy, right? But, he says, and it could be he's saying it, could be there's more to it afterwards, right? But he's trying to bring out a character, how the character is, right? But it's definitely damaging information. If the family turned out okay, kids turned out okay, that's a miracle. Now, it doesn't say the kids didn't turn out okay, right? He's not necessarily, but that's damaging information. Now, the question is, are you allowed to tell your brother-in-law? Because that's going to create rechilas, right? Remember, animosity in between two different people, that's rechilas, right? So are you allowed to tell Shimshon? I can say, why don't you go over to, Shimshon and say, hey, don't do that. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, right? Maybe you don't have the relationship. Maybe he won't stop. Maybe you're just going to make matters worse, right? There could be different reasons why, yes, maybe you did go over and he didn't say anything, right? So let's leave that out. Remember, that's a possibility, right? The question over here is, by you telling your brother-in-law, right, that he is saying, demeaning and outdated information. Again, it's outdated and demeaning information, right? Is that now going to create rechilas? Yes or no? Guys, what do you think? No one? Wow.
I say no.
How could it not?
I say no.
You say don't say anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna play it safe this week.
I'm agreeing. If you're not, I agree with her.
Okay, Cindy agrees with her. No, that was Sherry, sorry.
Sorry.
I would speak to Shimon. I mean, is that what it
I
sounds?
said that already. I said that already. You can't do that. That's not an answer. I
Don't
said
do
you have
that.
to speak to Shimon. You can't speak to Shimon. You should speak to Shimon. You shouldn't speak to Shimon. That's not the discussion over here. I made sure this time to add that in, right, because of our discussion last time. It's a good thing, bad thing. You could, you can't. He won't listen to you. You know he won't listen to you. You already tried speaking to him. Now you want to speak to him. let's leave that out.
For sure, Achilles.
For
I don't
sure.
I don't even understand. I mean, I'm not looking at the answer,
Good.
but I don't understand how it wouldn't be. This guy is walking around like blaspheming, your brother. So
by telling your brother-in-law, that's going to create a bad will. So that's Achilles.
Yeah. I mean, I might still tell because I might still say something because I feel like this guy is doing serious damage. So I might still do it, or I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
You're willing to jump on the grenade for your brother-in-law, right? You're willing to do the transgression of Achilles for your brother-in-law, I'm not saying it is transgression, but based off what you're saying, let's leave that out. If you're going to say you're not going to say, you hold that it is Achilles.
I think you're obligated to tell.
So Chayla is taking the opposite there. You think you're obligated to tell. So it's not Achilles. You have an obligation, but not only is it not Achilles, but you have an obligation to tell. Why?
Because somebody is out there totally disparaging this family.
Right, but
they have a right to know. They have a need to know, and if you've heard that, that's an obligation.
Okay, so you're saying the laws of Achilles don't apply over here because someone is hurting this family and they have to know that someone's hurting this family. So creating bad friction and animosity and could lead into hatred and big outright war in between these two families, right? You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to create that because the family has the right to know that someone's talking negative about them. And isn't that the basis? I'm not saying you're wrong, right? But isn't that the basis of Achilles usually, that someone is saying or doing something bad about that person, and you're not allowed to say that because it's going to create fights? I mean,
can I add? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, finish. No, I was gonna back her up and just say, like, it seems like it's Toelis.
Yeah, that protecting your family supersedes that.
But it's also Toelis because you're not.
So you're using the magic word. Or is it using the word Toelis, right?
Because,
I'm assuming that's what you're referring to.
You're not just like saying something that you heard and like it's fun to tell someone and maybe it'll hurt their feelings and you shouldn't do it because it'll hurt their feelings. Like here, they're actually causing destruction with their words, and they're walking around ruining something. And like it seems like it should be. I mean, again, I don't know what it says in the book, but it seems like it should be Toelis just to put a stop to it, and whatever that means. So whether that's doing it yourself or doing it or telling your brother-in-law, it seems like there is. Like this person is going around destroying something. So it's not okay just to be like, well, can't say anything, Lashon Hara.
Okay, so you're using the Toelis clause. I'm not disagreeing with you. You're using the Toelis clause. Okay. Now that Emily threw into the ring the Toelis clause, right? Anybody want to either change their mind or stay with the way they were saying? Cindy, I see you took off your mute. You want to add in something?
No, I kind of agree with Emily.
Oh, okay. Emily, you got another backer on your side. All right. So we got Suzette against Emily. Let's battle this out. All right. We have...
Yeah, stop the bad talk. Like that's not okay. If he's continuously saying it over and over and over, you gotta stop it.
Okay. And I hear your emotions. The question is, and I'm not disagreeing with that, right? But the question is, halachically, what are you allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say? Right? Remember, just because it feels right or they're doing wrong doesn't mean to say that you have the right to do something wrong either, right? And I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying there is no Toelis. I'm just pointing out there this is our discussion, right? What's considered Toelis? What's not considered Toelis? Right? Is this the right thing or not the right thing? Right? Because you are now gonna, create. You're right. They're talking about it. And it's having to have two girls or one girl or maybe four girls or whatever it is. Right? And they're one of 50, 45 people that people ask information. Not always are they going to ask that person information. Right? They'll ask. They happen to be there sitting next to you. Right? And that's why they ask. Right? So the creating the ongoing hatred between these two families, right? Because this is very damaging information. I'm sure it's going to create animosity and it's going to create a lot of friction for the ongoing, is that you're allowed to do that for protection, which is damaging, but there are other people on the references, and a lot of times people read through this and they all say, yeah, it was in the past, but the kids are good. I want to know about the kids, right? I want to hear update people. A lot of times people can read through this. I'm not saying it's not damaging, and I'm not saying that they can't, right? So I'm just trying to paint a picture of, we have to put things in perspective. And again, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, right? I'm just saying we have to put things in perspective, that not only for the second we are in front of us, but looking long-term, right? What's really going to be best for this relationship, or what's really going to be best for, your brother-in-law, right? That now they're a good friend of his, whatever it is, they're going to now become enemies. They're not going to go to each other's weddings in 10 years from now, right? Is that justified for this thing? Now, maybe it is, maybe it's not, right? I'm just trying to bring out that you're right. Right now, when we look at it just right now, it is a terrible thing and it's not right, and they're doing wrong. Right. But when we are going to go say something, this is in general in life, when we say something, we have to weigh our words. When we act or do something, we have to weigh our actions and realize that there's consequences down the line, right? Or maybe even a week from now, right? Or even further, right? That we have to put into consideration of really weighing the situation, seeing what's right and wrong, what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing, right? And that's an important thing to always remember, right? When we say something, how we say something, when we do something, when we don't do something, it's not just for now. It's also, it has ripple effects. The butterfly effect. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, right? The butterfly effect, it affects things, down the line. And that's something that we have to put into consideration also, of the effect of what this is going to do. Yes, it might protect right now for 5 minutes, right? For the next person, they'll ask them, they'll take them off the thing, but there'll be a long-term effect also. Now, I'm not saying it's shouldn't do that, but I think it's also an important thing to reflect in our lives in general. And we think that we have to say something. We think we have to act a certain way. We think we have to do something, right? Better or worse, whatever it is, right? But these things have a butterfly effect, right? That it's not something, no, I didn't want that to happen. Oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh, my kids, now don't do, or, whatever it is, right? Or now that person doesn't talk to me. You have to be very careful how you say things. Now, sometimes you have to do things, and what can we do? There might be a butterfly effect, but that is something to be considered about. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying something to think about. Bonnie, what do you want to say?
No, I'm just thinking, I would suggest just to eliminate all of that is, but then again, it's, inferring that word is being spread, but just to recommend that he doesn't use that particular person, as his reference.
Okay, right. So there might be ways of saying it. That's true. Bonnie Malamed? You're muted. There you go.
Good. Hey, everybody. Good morning. I don't think we touched upon the idea of this person who's sitting at the table, the brother saying like, hey, like nip this in the bud. My gut reaction was just, if you're sitting at the table, try to be as polite, respectful as possible and say, I actually know another side of him. I happen to be his brother-in-law. Now, those two, Shimon and Levi, are going to take a step back and say, oh, maybe that'll put them in their place, not in a bad way, but like that they maybe should not be discussing this. Or actually, it's fine, I think, for Levi to ask Shimon about it, because that's one of the things you could ask questions about for Shidduchim. But Shimon's reaction was apparently wrong. So what if the brother-in-law said, that is my brother. He's grown up quite a bit, and I'll be glad to answer questions. He's got a lot of wonderful qualities, as does his child. Would you like me to be a reference for you?
Right. So Bonnie, you're 100% correct, and that's something that probably should be done. The discussion is, let's say either you can't or you did, and the person is still saying it. right? Let's say you don't have that opportunity. You do have that opportunity. You said or you didn't say it, right? The question is, are you allowed to go ahead and say something to your brother-in-law? What would be a good idea to do? Yes, speak to that person, not to say anything, right? Speak to at that moment, nip it in the bud, 100%. The question is, right, after that, are you allowed to go ahead and say something? Either you don't have a chance to say something, you couldn't say something, you don't feel comfortable saying something, right? You did say something, the person's still doing it, right? Whatever the situation is, but are you allowed to go ahead and tell your brother-in-law the question of rechilos? Would that be considered rechilos by creating animosity in between these two people that were either friends or at least cordial with each other? Right? Are you allowed to do that? Besides of what you might or might not do, right, to that person, speak to that person or whatever it is. You're right. There are things to do, right? The question is, what are you halachically, right? Are you allowed to tell your brother-in-law? That's the discussion over here. But you're 100% correct. You should speak to that person, right? There are ways of saying it, nipping it in the bud, blah, 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 and all those good, wonderful things, right? The discussion over here is, are you allowed to tell your brother-in-law, right? Is it toelas? Is there a reason for it to stop him from having him as a reference or having a talk with that person, right? Or that toelas is not enough, or there is no toelas, so it's not considered toelas, or who cares if there's toelas, right? You still be creating a possible lasting animosity to these two people, right? For maybe once or twice being asked. That's a discussion over here. Emily, you want to say something?
Yeah, but maybe the toelis is based on, let's say, like what some people have been saying, like you go and you have a talk with Shimon. So maybe the toelis is based on how Shimon responds. Like if Shimon responds, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize he grew up this, he's really grown up and his kids are a lot better. I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, then there would be no reason. But if Shimon responded, I'm just throwing out a possibility. Let's say Shimon responded like, oh, okay, whatever, and like walked away and didn't seem to care or didn't seem to feel bad, then maybe there would be a toelis in saying it. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe if you could have,
I agree. I hear that.
It could like determine whether or not there's toelis based on how Shimon responds.
Okay, so I think now, unless anybody else wants to chime in before I start talking again.
I have a comment, but I want to hear what you have to say first, Rabbi. But I do have a comment.
You want to say your comment first, or do you?
No, I want you to go first, please.
Okay. Okay. So let's get into this. So there is definitely toelis going on over here, right? And that's really the basis. As I said, we're taking another path in this discussion, right? Until now, we showed the severity and how far it goes. The concept of the animosity, right? Even if you remember last time we spoke about the concept of avak lashon hara, rechilas, vak rechilas, if it comes out, not directly, indirectly, right? We spoke about you're allowed to even alter the facts just a little bit, right? To avoid animosity in between people, right? If you have to say something or if what you're going to say is going to create or not say, right? Even if you don't say anything, right? But it's going to be implied. Right? So we just showed how severe it is. Now, today we're going to talk about toelis. Yes, that is the right word to use. There is a toelis, right? even in rechilas, just like in lashon hara, right? Sometimes, right? Right now, what you do now, you have to focus on now. There is toelis, and the person's being harmed, and you have to do something, right? What we're going to talk about is 3 rules, right? Of what would be constitutes as toelis, and if it fits in these rules, right, then you're allowed to go ahead and say something. So, Emily, you're right. It varies on the situation. Now, this will definitely play a role if you spoke to the person, if you nipped it in the bud, had the person's reactions. Excuse me, right? Now that we know that the rule is toelis, right? And I'm just explaining something. Now that we know the rule is toelis, we're going to go through the rules in 1 minute, right? But now that we know the rules is toelis, now the other factors of if you spoke to the person, you didn't speak to the person, you nipped it in the bud, you didn't nip it in the bud, you know this person, you know how many more kids this person has, right? Of if there's going to be more sudochim being asked, or this is their baby and it's the last one, and it's just like, you know what, whatever. It's done, right? That now we have to figure out all those details because Judaism works with rules, right? It doesn't work with a scenario. as rules. Now that we're going to have the rules, we're going to have to see what the scenarios, and there's could be infinite amount of different scenarios, because it can be varied on many different things. What was the tone of voice when he said it, right? Did he continue saying afterwards some positive things? Yeah, but his kids are really great, and it is a miracle, and whatever, and he, he's a respected person in the community now, blah blah blah. There could be a million different variables of how other details now come into the rule. Now, every one of those, you're going to have to fit in and see, does it fit in these rules or not? Right? And therefore, we can't go through every scenario. Torah does not go through every scenario. The Torah tells us the rules. We have to see how those rules fit into the scenario, fit into the rules. So let's go through the rules, okay? And then we'll have a discussion. So the rules are like this. Right? There are 3 questions, right? Whether Rechilas qualifies as Toelis. Number 1, does it provide warning that someone intends to harm another person so that he can prevent it? Right? Very good. Does it provide warning, right, that someone intends to harm, right? So there's intent to harm, right? So that he can prevent it, right? So was there harm, right? Did you take care of the harm, right? To prevent it, prevent further harm, right? So maybe this is the last kid, and no one else, there's no more kids going to be asked. And no more questions going to be asked, right? Whatever it is, right? I don't know. Maybe this person is whatever. This could be this person is ill and they're gonna die soon. So you're very nice, you can say, but next kid is 5 years, 5 years younger, and this person's not, people don't think he's gonna live that long, or whatever it is, right? I'm throwing out weird scenarios, but it could be a million different scenarios. So number 1 rule is, does it provide warning that someone intends to harm? Number 1. Number 2, right? Part of this is, right, so that he can prevent it. Not just that it provides warning the person intends to harm. I mean, that is, but that the person can prevent it. Number 2, right? Does it inform someone that another person is personally harming him, so he can put an end to it? For this reason, you may tell your brother-in-law to remove Shim's name as a reference. Right? This information, right? Does it inform someone that another person is personally harming him? Right? It's a personal harm, not a general, not personal harm. Right? So you can put an end to it. Again, what would be putting an end? Taking him off the reference list. Right? Does it inform someone? Number 3, does it inform someone that another person has harmed him, so that the victim can seek a restoration? Right? So the thing that connects all of them is that the person's harming him. The question is, just because a person's harming him doesn't mean to say, as we said, just because a person's harming doesn't mean to say that you now could create another fight in between these people, right? There has to be toelis a positive. Number 1, that you could prevent it, prevention. Right? Number 1. Right? Number 2 is, right, inform someone that is the person's personally harming him, that he could put an end to it. Right? Could put an end to that harm. Number 3, that the person could seek restoration, right? So someone, hey, I want you to know, I'm a witness. I saw that person, damage your car, right? It's going to create ill will, but the person go ahead and ask for restoration, right? So even with these guidelines, right, it is wise to consult a Rav to make sure you're judging the situation objectively, right? Because don't forget, especially if you're family, maybe the person was saying it more jokingly, right? And you don't know the relationship in between these 2 people that are talking, right? And he knows this person, right? The Chaim or Levi or whatever it is, right? That he's more of a joker, whatever it is, and he says things in the exact. So you don't know all the situations. When you hear it, it sounds terrible information, but he told this guy because they have a long-standing relationship, and he knows that he says things a little exotic and not to take it to heart, right? And then he'll tell him some other things. So the damage might not be as big as you think it is, right? And now you go ahead and you're going to blow the whole thing out of proportion, right? Maybe not, right? So bottom line, it's always good to double check, right, before you go ahead and say something. But there are definitely rules of toelis that apply to rechilas, just like they apply to lashon hara, right? The common denominator is if there's something that could be done about this, right? Either prevention, right, to stop it, right, or for restoration, right? If those are the reasons, A, that you're saying it, B, that will be accomplished, right, and needs to be accomplished, right? So then one could go ahead and say that this person is harming you, right? But you have to be very careful, right, to assess the whole situation and to make sure that these things are fitting. Again, it's the last child, and it was, the question was asked and it gave the information ready, right? So there's no restoration, right? There's no stopping it. There's no preventing for the future, right? It's done. It was what it was, right? So why are you not going to create a fight between these people, right? Oh, he shouldn't have. Stop staying on your high horse just to make yourself feel better, right? You're still creating a fight between people, and there's no reason for it. The person was wrong. You go talk to that person, say, hey, you know, that was really wrong. Maybe you should go over and tell them, you know, you were just joking, or if he's changed, whatever like that. But, you know, go ahead and talk to that person. But to create a fight between these two people, that's ridiculous. That's creating a fight, and there's no reason to do that. Now, again, if there's some way to, you think that there will be a way to stop it, prevent it from the future, restoration, so then yes, and you have to go ahead and say something, and Rechilas does not apply. Any questions, comments?
I have comments.
Go ahead, Suzette.
Okay, so I get all of that. I'm not sure that I agree with where the halakha went, but it does say consult a Rav, so I'm going to consult you. So how, in looking at the dilemma itself, what I'm reading is that, I don't know how this would have read in the Hebrew, but the line that reads, your ears perk up, that says to me in English that you made a deliberate attempt to overhear something. And I think from that perspective that you went out of your way to hear something that was not directed at you. It's not as if it was stated so that you could hear. You went out of your way to hear. And that's why I still think that you shouldn't say anything, because you made a deliberate attempt to hear what was being said to someone else on the other side in a more private setting.
Okay, so go ahead.
So that's the first thing I see, that if I put myself as the you in there, then, you know, I am making a deliberate attempt to eavesdrop on that part of the conversation. And I think that in doing so, whatever I hear, I don't have the right to pass on. I should know
Okay,
that.
so your point is very valid. Being eavesdropping, and it could be other prohibitions on that also, right? You're not necessarily allowed to eavesdrop. You know, that's privacy of other people. It might not be a biblical prohibition. It might be one of the Chem Rabbeinu Gershom. You're not allowed to open up other people's mails, right? The question is that also looking, eavesdropping, the concept of privacy. There are laws regarding that too. All right. 2 points. Number one is, I don't want to get too sidetracked regarding this law, but when you're sitting around a table, right, it's not the best place to have a private conversation. So if you're having a conversation, even if you're just talking to the person next to you, it is expected to understand that other people might hear it. You want to have a private conversation, you go away from the table, or you got a 2-man table, right, a 2-person table, sorry, right, and you go ahead and you have that private conversation. But if you are at a function, right, or at a kiddush, or just dinner, or whatever it is, and there's other people sitting on the table, and they are supposed to be sitting on that table, right, not just crashing your table, right, so then you cannot claim that you are just having a private conversation, because there is no concept of privacy when other people are around, right? So yes, maybe you shouldn't have said, listen, you're right, you perk your ears. That is definitely a thing. You are listening out, and but they're talking in a public place where you're allowed to be sitting, right? You don't have to put cottons in the ears and not listen, right? You could try to be a little more discreet, right, and try not to listen, but it's human nature. We hear things, right? That's one point, right, regarding that. Number 2 is that maybe you might have done wrong by hearing the conversation. But let's say you heard 2 people talking. Let's just change it, and you say, oh, this person, I just found out that they're looking for loans and things like that. Let's do a hostile takeover. Let's try to buy all the shares and things like that and kick them out. And right, so you're still not going to say anything, right? So the question is, what is, again, everything has a line, right? Everything has a line, right? You know, I was just talking to someone, we've used this many times in classes, but it just reminds me, and I always love, and I hold it's important to always reiterate, but so I'll use this opportunity. And we all have lines of what is considered important, what's not considered important. And it's, you know, the same thing of, you know, there's this idea out there now in the world that love dominates everything. They're in love. Love is the best thing for everything. I know it's nothing to do with Lashon Hara, right? But talking about having lines, right? And therefore, since, you know, love trumps all, so therefore they love each other, let them get married, let them be together, whatever it is. And again, I'm not judging any individual. I'm not saying they don't love each other. And I'm not saying that it's, I'm not judging any individual in any one way. I know we're being recorded, right? But love does not control everything, because everybody has a red line of love, right? I love, if someone loves their daughter, it doesn't mean to say they're going to get married to each other, right? If someone loves, you know, a minor, it doesn't mean to say they're going to. We have, and I know I'm going to extremes because we have to go to extremes, but love is not the defining factor of everything. We all have a red line. The question is, what defines that red line, right? Nowadays, that red line is constantly in flux. It just depends on what I feel that the society or whatever feels is right. That's constantly changing. What they felt was the red line 20 years ago, now they think is barbaric, right? And 20 years from now, they're going to think what our red line is barbaric. And it's constantly in flux and changing. And we have to have rules, right, that define what is right and what is wrong, right? That's why Pirkei Avos, as we spoke about many times, and especially in our class in Pirkei Avos, ethics of our followers, talks about ethics and moral conduct and the way to talk, starts off with our tradition. Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, and then to Yeshua, and to the prophets, and to the elders, and to the all the way to us. That we have an ongoing reason, it's not based on our feelings, and it's not based on what we think, but it's guided by God, who decided in this world, who created this world, decided what is right and what is wrong. It doesn't mean to say we're not allowed to have feelings. It doesn't mean to say that we might have a hard time with things, but it is a guiding North Star to tell us how we have to try to align ourselves with that, and to re-change our values, and to re-change what is right and wrong based on that. Because anybody tells you that my guiding thing is love, or my guiding thing is this, right? There's always a line that they won't cross, right? There's always something that you go to a crazy extreme, but there's something they won't cross. It's not it, right? It's just they're using that as a reason to do whatever else they want, right? And that's a similar thing over here. You're right. You're not supposed to eavesdrop, and you might have heard this in the wrong way, right? But there is a certain line, right, where just because you came to the information maybe in the wrong way, but if the other person's going to get hurt, the other person's going to get physically hurt, or emotionally hurt, or other ways, right? You might have that obligation, even though you came about to it in the wrong way, to go ahead and say something. All right. But again, at the same time, just because you feel that that person should know, right? But really the outcome is not really going to make any difference, right? There's no toelis here. So just because you feel that that person should know what was said about him, that doesn't make it right either, because the Torah looks at everything, and there's going to be you're going to create just so you need to get something off your chest, and now you're going to create a fight between two people, which there's no reason for it either. And that's why we need the guiding lines of the Torah to tell us, because we are constantly in flux with our emotions and our feelings and our things and our that, and society's constantly dictating certain things for us, and we're influenced by it, and we're trying to fight it, we're this, we're that, and different people feel different things, right, and have different views on different things, right? And that's why we need the Torah to give its guidelines. And I said the Torah gives us rules, and now we have to fit into those rules, right? And to see the Torah doesn't give for every scenario, but the Torah gives us rules, right? And that's why we have those rules, right? Part of those rules are also to teach us what is Torah-based proper guidelines, because Torah-based proper guidelines is never changing. It's fixed. It's been around forever, and it's still around, and it's based off. If you believe in God, it's based off what Hashem tells us to do, right? So we have to try to fit ourselves into that, and not that into us, because we are constantly in flux. We're constantly changing, right? We're constantly evolving what we think is right and wrong. You know, just let's just think about ourselves, how we were 20 years ago, how we are now. for the better, or sometimes, for worse, right? I'm not saying bad, right? But that's something that's constantly in flux, and therefore that's the guidelines of the Torah, right? And that's why Pirkei Avos starts off with how the Torah is just transmitted, right? To remind us that this is all rooted in Torah, in God giving us the guidelines. And it's the same thing with our discussion over here, how we feel regarding either way. You came to the information the wrong way, right? Or my brother-in-law's nephew's getting hurt, right? It's the same thing of who we love and who we don't love, right? What we do with that love, let me rephrase that, right? Or other things, how, financially, it's easier this way, financially, it's easier that way, or, I needed this, I needed that, it's too hard waking up. Everything has guidelines, and we have to follow the guidelines of the Torah. So I hope you don't mind that I went a little off tangents, but I think you give me the opportunity to really talk about this important topic again.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn the recording off. If there's any other questions.